Good morning, welcome to 59 Minutes. My name is Levi Kones. This particular morning we're going to be discussing about curbing fake news on the political scene in Kenya on social media. To join me in that discussion is NDEGWA. She is the Meta Public Policy Director for East and the Horn of Africa. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. A lot of people still don't know Meta is Facebook.
We get that a lot. Yeah. And I wouldn't fault them because, you know, Meta, the name rebranded to Meta, the company rebranded to Meta in October last year. Mm-hmm. And it was necessitated by the fact that we were using the name Facebook, which is just one of the platforms that we have as a company for a really long time, because that's how the company started out way back. And over time, we have since, you know, acquired other companies and we've rolled out other technologies. So we have WhatsApp, which is very popular here as well, Messenger, Instagram that people use. And it felt that we had come to a point where we needed to have all of this under one company brand name. And so Meta was born.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it represents all of those companies and other technologies that we still don't have here, but...
So when they say that you're doing policy, just break it down. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so public policy. So if I could just start with what public policy is. Public policy is about policies that affect the general public. It will be across different sectors, different things. It could be about health issues, it could be about transportation, it could be about ICTs in the case of the space I'm in. And generally the mandate to develop and write policies tends to be the governments. Mm-hmm. But public policy experts or professionals like myself usually tend to work for private companies and are representing the interests of those companies when it comes to public policy issues that would interact or overlap with their business in one form or shape. So like in my case, I'm a tech policy person, and I've always worked in tech, and the interests that I would have or the positioning of my work tends to be to see how I can work alongside government, work alongside the ecosystem, the business ecosystem that cares about similar issues as the company I work for, to see how we shape those policies for the betterment of the services we offer to the public. And so that is what I've been doing. And in the case of Meta, that presents itself in form of how do we make sure that we're advising the company well. So and say we, I mean that because we have a team of people, so it's not just myself. Actually, the public policy team is really huge. We are there globally, but we also have regional teams like mine who are based in region, so within the countries where we operate. And ours is to make sure that we are staying close to insights around what is developing in form of policy or even legislative developments such as bills that are being proposed in Parliament or in other places regarding ICTs. And is there a way we can share expertise, best practice, or just gather insights around what is really key or important in that country regarding those issues that are affecting ICTs, and see how we can work together with others to shape and influence them, again, for the betterment or for the, let me say, for the overall good of those who will be consuming those services or affected by those policies. And so that's really the key role. But in addition to that, we also bring, not only do we work to alongside others to see how we shape and influence those policies, but we also take insights from the markets where we operate, so the countries where we operate. I presently cover Eastern Horn of Africa, like you said in the introduction. And that means then my team and I, who are based here in Nairobi, are generally making sure that we are picking up interests of users of our platforms, insights regarding how their experiences are, and feeding that back to the company to ensure that when we're developing internal policies of how people can conduct themselves on our platforms, they are representative of that global voice. And that is done similarly across all of the different regional teams. So that's also a really key part. But also, sometimes in doing that, when we discover that we gather certain insights, we discover that there's gaps in maybe the understanding or awareness of people regarding the use of our platforms. And that would also inform some of the programs then we end up running. So again, that becomes a really key part of the work we do, because we'll then want to make sure that we are bringing the relevant skills and digital skills awareness across the communities we are part of, to make sure that people are able to use our technologies better. I see a lot of people who pivot very well in terms of business by just starting to use social media platforms better to reach audiences they otherwise would not have reached. Or to be able to have better metrics about the business that they're running, you know, how many people are viewing your ad, for example, how many people actually are engaging with you, etc., which really tends to be very helpful for someone who's in business when they're trying to make sure that they're investing in the right places in maybe marketing themselves or reaching their audiences. So these are all part of what the public policy team will do.
So then does that mean that in terms of policy, what you come up with is different depending on the regions you're in? Or does it cut across the board? does what you say affect everyone globally?
So when it comes, yes, so our policies internally affect everybody globally, because at the end of the day, I think it's good to just keep in mind the fact that our platforms are global platforms. They're let me say, they're experienced similarly across. So for example, if you log on to Facebook here in Nairobi and went to, say, I don't know, pick a country of choice, India or wherever, that is exactly the same experience you'll have on Facebook there. And so our platforms tend to be global. And for that reason, it is easier for us to have globally acceptable policies or rules that then can govern the use of our platforms similarly across the world. And so, yes, in terms of internal policies, yes, those are globally applicable. But when it comes to the policies in country, those of course will vary depending on what priorities the country has. So for instance, in the case of Kenya, maybe Kenya may be looking at advancing maybe more use of tech in schools, for example. And so we would be supporting those kinds of initiatives. But in a different country, say Ethiopia, maybe they want to see how they can address conflict as a key priority. And so the policies would be helping with or working very closely with them on will be those that are related to issues like that. How do we get maybe more awareness around the use of digital spaces in a more responsible manner and in a way that is safe for everyone? And so it varies in that way, but then all of those tend to be, at one point or the other, similar across countries.
Yeah, people wonder, there's actually an office for Facebook here.
We actually don't have an office. We are remote-based employees. That means we work from home. And the reason for that is we are a digital company. It is usually not practical to have offices in every country we operate in. We presently have, we operate in about 294 countries around the world. As you would imagine, for any business, the most efficient way then would not be to set up shop everywhere. And so we work very digitally because, again, this is a country that has very good internet. And so it makes it very easy for us to be able to do that from anywhere.
Yeah.
And also because we, like I said, they cover a huge region, and in addition to that, we are constantly moving across those different countries. And so it is not, it's not always practical to have an office. Right. So no, we don't have an office, but we do have a big team based in Nairobi. So
you cannot tell people, this is where we'll be found.
There's no address.
Find us on Facebook.
There's no address. I'll be at home working from my office in the house, as would be my colleagues.
Now, we are a highly political country. And every time, we are politically charged, we express ourselves quite a lot on social media. A lot of us are on Facebook. I think it's the biggest platform still in the country. I could be wrong, but I think Facebook is actually bigger than most social other platforms in this country. And we speak a lot there. Now, there's disinformation, misinformation, and fake news. Maybe you can give us the definitions before you tell us what you're doing about them.
Okay, so, and that's a wonderful question, because we do experience, I think, that specific issue here in Kenya as we do in other countries. Misinformation is where you may have an intentional information that is put out there that is not intentionally intended to mislead people. So for example, it is just a perspective from a person of a view regarding an issue. So for instance, Levi may think that what you're seeing in front of you is not necessarily a red and gray table, that these colors could actually be orange and gray. And you put out that information and say, I sat at a beautiful studio with a gray and orange table.
But I'm genuine about it.
And you're genuine, you're just putting out information saying this is what it is. But then it is not necessarily correct in terms of, when it comes to colors, is it really true? So it's a perspective, and that makes it really difficult. But you could also be on there, on the platforms, putting out information saying, in fact, I was in the studio and there was no table. And you're intentionally trying to paint the organization maybe in a certain way. You're trying to disinform people. So disinformation is where you intentionally come with the intent to want to mislead with the information that you're putting out. Does that help you to draw a difference?
One is deceitful.
Yes, there's almost like the intention is to actually lead people. You coming with the malice, let me say, to come and put out information. When it comes to misinfo, a lot of times people are sharing that content online, unaware that it is actually misinforming. So it is because a friend has shared it, you believe your friend must know, and therefore you could share that because your friend has said it, and you share it along, and it's just misinforming. And in some instances, people conflate the two, and that is also understandable. But then there is now fake news. Fake news, again, would be instances where you have the way that an issue is being reported, a fact is being reported, or it is actually not necessarily a fact, but it is, you portray it as though it were a fact. you know, think about news from the perspective of what you're publishing to put out for people to consume. So a lot of times would probably be, you know, because you're either in the media space yourself, or you are, a lot of people now have become bloggers, and the non-conventional, let me say, media, way of consuming media tends to be from people who are not necessarily journalists and so on, but they are publishing content with the intention of putting out a narrative or fact according to their perspective, but then you churning it with the intention of creating a perspective that is a lie. So for example, you have an actual fact that me and you are here in this room today, and then you have someone maybe create a fake showing there was somebody else sitting next to me, and you have a Photoshop, for instance. You know, you're publishing a fact, but you have misconstrued it, for instance, would be constituted as a fake news item. And that's why you hear things like deep fakes, for instance, would fall in the same category of fake news, or it's just you're trying to make an announcement of something that you know is manipulated or incorrect, but you're conflating a fact with a lie. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So tell us, so what do you guys
do around
about
things?
it? Yes.
Okay. So a number of things. Number one, we recognize that perspectives can be very different. Like I said, when it comes to something like misinfo, people have different perspectives. But we appreciate that our platforms are places where people can come and share their opinions, express themselves as they see fit. But we don't want that to happen at the expense of safety of others. And so for us, constantly, we're thinking about how do we balance out voice and safety of people on our platforms, that we can allow people to amplify their voice, to express themselves as they see fit, but at the same time that they don't do this and harm others while doing so. And so misinformation in itself, it may not necessarily be harmful, but in instances where it might be. So for instance, where you put out misinformation that ends up with causing someone death or financial loss or injury, then those are pieces of misinformation that are of concern to us, and we'll take those down. So we remove that from our platform. So that's one of the things we'll do. But in instances where information has been put out, we establish that it is fake, we take different actions, including reducing the distribution of that piece of content from our platform. So you see, for example, there is no likelihood of people being harmed as a result of this information being out there, but at the same time, because it has been determined not to be true, we would demote people, you know, it from the newsfeed so that people don't see it as soon as they land on their page. So newsfeed is where you land as soon as you get onto like any of our platforms. So we will reduce the visibility of that piece of content because we've established it to be fake. And maybe your question will be, how then do we establish it? Which is again a big part of what we do when it comes to misinfo, disinfo, and fake news. We work very closely with third-party fact checkers, and third-party fact-checking organizations tend to be organizations that are constantly scouring through the internet to make sure that they
have guys just looking
constantly. They have teams that are constantly looking, that have local language understanding. They are often based in region, that are looking through different content. Yes, that is the key reason why they form those organizations. They're constantly checking to keep the internet safe, pretty much, and to check for any such misrepresentation of content or fact. And when they establish something to not be true, then they will send that information to us and say, we know that this is actually not a real picture of Mercy Levy and somebody who's claiming to have been in the room with us, and they will say that this did not happen in this way, this is false, please, they'll inform us, and then we'll take the decision to take it down if it's again harmful, or we then minimize the distribution of that piece of content. And in addition, if they tell us that this is actually fake, you will see, we will do what we call informing the users about it by putting a stamp on it that says this is actually fake. So you have a stamp on it that says this is fake. And we also give you additional information should you want to establish why is it fake. Why I'm saying this is because when we see, for example, in the run-up to an election, there's a lot of such information that can come up. And to the extent that especially it might impact voter or the ability of a voter to go and participate in this important process in the right way, we are really concerned about things like that, and we want to make sure that any form of misinformation that has voter interference impact, we take it down, because we want to make sure that we uphold the integrity of an election. And so third-party fact checkers are really critical for us. And third-party fact checkers organizations, something else I forgot to mention is that they're neutral organizations. They're not in any form or shape or organizations. We just work with them as partners. We have over 80 of those across the world that we work with. In Kenya, we work with Agence France Presse, which is AFP, and also with PesaCheck.
Yeah.
So they cover content in local languages as well.
Yeah. So what's my responsibility as a user?
As a user, I think I'd say the most critical thing is to inform yourself about what we call our community standards. And our community standards tend to be the set of rules and policies that we have put out regarding how you should conduct yourself on our platforms. And this touches on many, many aspects or categories of content or issues that you might experience on our platform, including is it hate speech content? How do you share content that is likely to cause people to attack each other, that is hateful in nature? Are you sharing content or reading or coming across content that is inciting violence, for example? Especially around this time, those sensitivities are really critical for us, as they are across the year anyway. Is there content maybe you're coming across where people are getting bullied or harassed, or you yourself are churning out content around things like that? So a user needs to educate themselves about our community standards, which you can access on our website, facebook.com/community standards, you'll find it. Or you can search community standards on Google and just go to the pages that are from Facebook, and you'll find all of those rules there. But as a user, when you come across such content, number one, one of the things I'd say is, after you've educated yourself about our community standards, is also to ask yourself, so you may have come across that content, and it's not content from me, it's from other people, and you see it to be problematic. Reporting it is really important for us. And the way to report content, for every piece of content on any of our platforms, you have the 3 dots right adjacent to the content itself. So for example, if you put up a picture or a video or just text, there will be 3 dots adjacent to it, either horizontally or vertically, depending on the device you have. Click on those, it'll drop down a menu for you, and just select report this issue to Facebook team, and then you follow the prompts, and you should be able to just send that information to us. If you do that, it keeps you safe, it keeps others safe, and it also helps if you don't share, especially information that you already have established is not true. So being aware of your role and how you are either exacerbating or making things worse, or trying to stem that problem is really important, because I think ultimately all of us have the responsibility to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what measures have you guys put in place to make sure that the election integrity is upheld?
We have done quite a bit, and we always continuing to gather insights again about what more we could do. But I can tell you, primarily, number one, we've set up a huge team, a cross-functional team of experts from different disciplines around all of those issues that we tend to find presenting themselves even more during election season. So for example, experts around hate speech issues, around misinformation, experts around safety of women or vulnerable communities. There's, for example, journalists and media who tend to be targeted, especially around this time. Having this cross-functional team helps, because then they bring their different expertise in addressing any issues presenting themselves on our platform in the country where we're having the election. We have learned from the about 200 or so elections we've done globally so far, and including elections here in Africa. To name a few, we've had elections in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Ethiopia recently, in Uganda, Tanzania, and other places. And from all of these elections, some of the things we've picked up and learned are, how do we make sure that we get more people to be digitally aware? And so we are working, even in the case of Kenya, with a lot of partners on the ground, different civil society groups especially, that are very keen on outreach and education of just the public around issues around peace and conflict and so on. But how do we make sure that in that conversation that they're having with the public, that they also can then address issues of how to be responsible social media users? And we're doing a lot of that work. We are doing a lot of work with media, actually. We've been running since early June radio campaigns, a national campaign on radio around hate speech and misinformation particularly, because we want to make sure that people are very aware of what is allowable, not allowable, again, on our platform regarding those 2 issues. In addition to that, we have a team locally here in Nairobi who have been engaging very closely with the different election actors, so both on the government side and also like civil society, in making sure that we are getting the insights and working closely with them around what is most important for them to make sure that we are addressing when it comes to social media use, and also upskilling them on how to ensure that they're doing effective social media monitoring to curb or surface to us any issues that they see regarding content that is problematic. And so some of these are some of the things that we're doing. Of course, we are also touching base with our third-party fact checkers regularly to make sure that they are surfacing to us content that could be fake or misinforming. And generally just keeping a very close ear and eye on the ground regarding the use of our platforms and the feedback we have from different actors that we work closely with.
Yeah, so does it actually work? Because some people will say, I know so-and-so, they say a lot of hateful things, they're still on Facebook.
It has. I would want to say that I'm sure there are many people out there who have experienced at one point or another the actions that we take when we find content that is problematic on platforms. So for example, if you were to constantly post content that is, for example, misinforming, one of the things we'll do is to literally reduce the visibility of your page also on platforms. So the things that you continue to present in future, people probably will have less likelihood of seeing. That's one. But then if you continue with that behavior,
will I know you've done
we will
that?
Disable. Yeah, we have. Sorry?
Will I know that you've reduced the visibility?
Yourself?
Yeah.
You probably will, because you will see less engagement with your page, right? For example, assuming right. And then we also are making sure that we are, watching out for threats that are coordinated. And this is something I think I would want to emphasize here, because it also tends to be very common around election seasons, where you find people who hire maybe young people or a group of people to sit around computers and just churn out content online to try and paint a different side as bad, or to hype themselves in a way that is probably inauthentic. And so all of this, because it's coordinated and inauthentic in itself, we take down content like that, and we actually also impact all of the pages that are involved in that. So you find that not only will we remove the pages that have been found to have that, let me say, misinformation, or rather coordinated, inauthentic content, but anyone who is an admin of those pages and their pages, other pages that might manage outside of the ones that are involved in the inauthentic behavior, also get impacted. So we remove those as well. And we are constantly watching out for that also through, let me say, organizations that work very closely, forensic, they're actually very digital forensic experts who constantly are checking out for those kinds of issues. But also because we get a lot of reports from users about things that they start to see and say, we are seeing repeatedly this and that will flag for us that there might be a problem, and we'll flag it then to a team of experts to really investigate and look. And if you find that kind of behavior presenting itself, then we tackle it. In addition, what we would do would be, content, we would remove content. We may disable accounts that are repeatedly presenting that behavior, so that we don't allow people to continue getting impacted by bad content that's coming from these users. So bad actors we remove from our platform altogether. And also then we continue to also educate, because it's not just the punitive side of things. We want to make sure that users are also made aware, because a lot of times you find others will say they didn't know that this was actually wrong, and which is why I said in the earlier comments that it is really helpful if people educate themselves around our community standards. What are the rules that allow or don't allow for me to do these things on platform? Know that before you get engaged into especially campaign-related activity or any form of behavior online that you are not certain about whether it will present a problem or not. Yeah. But we will disable accounts. We will stop you for certain periods. There are people who talk about Facebook jail, but there is suspension of accounts from time to time for those who are caught to do that. And then also we inform the publics around what is allowed or not allowed by working again with partners on the ground all the time.
So let's talk a bit about that education. Let's do a bit of it. If I want to express displeasure of a political statement, a politician or something, other than, of course, the offensive, vulgar words, what can I not say in expressing myself on,
So let's start with saying that a political candidate or anyone who is in a political process is a public figure. And we have very clear policies also around public figures. And we do allow people to critique public figures, because at the end of the day, these public figures are out to serve them, or are a public institution and need for people to be able to interrogate whether they are delivering as per the expectation of the public that they are serving. So that is allowed. But then we also must also safeguard the interests of this public figure. So at the end of the day, if your commentary is outside of the things that the person is trying to do, so for example, you're critiquing, for example, a political candidate for their manifesto or whatever it is that they're presenting to you, but at the same time you're targeting them based on sexualized content, trying to say you're this or that, your body is this and that then draws, it becomes a problem if you're making this not about the issue at hand, but now personalizing to their features and their characteristics and who they are. So we have to draw a distinction, because at the end of the day, even this public figure is a user on our platforms, and we have to safeguard their interests too. And so to the extent that you're commenting about the issues at hand regarding the issues that you're critiquing, that will be okay. But then now when it degenerates into abuse or bullying and harassment, or violently inciting people to attack this person or to do harm to them, or if you're talking about inciting others, what we call hate speech, being you're personalizing this attack to not just him, but even a community they're representing, and then proposing an action that should happen to them. That then is what we'd call hate speech, and that would warrant us to remove your content, because it then violates our community standards. The very standards by which we use to determine whether the content should stay up or not. And so this basically is the rule book. And so why I said familiarize yourself is because once you have that knowledge and awareness about our community standards, you're likely to then behave yourself the right way, and you will not be impacted by this.
Yeah.
But then we of course do allow for you to be able to critique your public figures.
Yeah. One of the challenges we are facing with many users is they say, there's a lot of hacking going on. And someone taking over your accounts, maybe posting on your behalf, maybe saying some things. If I got hacked, what's my recourse?
With hacking, I think, especially with hacking, because we hear about hacking quite a bit, and especially for, again, public figures, but also people who are high profile in terms of either you're an influential blogger or you're a media personality like yourself. People know you and you have maybe a huge following online. And so those accounts tend to be vulnerable, and hackers would want to try and hack. And I think we need to recognize the fact that there will be sophisticated bad actors online, as is the case with out here in the physical world. And I think how to keep yourself safe is what is really critical and important. So when it comes to hacking, a couple of things. Number one, ensure that you have enabled the right security settings for your account. A lot of times we find that people who have gotten hacked have not enabled their two-factor authentication, for instance. It is basic, it's pretty simple. If you go to, for example, Facebook, on your settings, you'll find the security checkup. Do one. Do a very simple one. And if you go to security settings, once you go to settings on the menu on your Facebook account, go to security settings and enable two-factor authentication. What that allows you to do is to pair your account with, for example, your mobile number, so that if there's any activity on your account, it will send an alert to your phone to confirm if that was you, or if it's you who's actually making those changes. And therefore, if you say it's me, then we allow for that to proceed. If not, then we will block that activity from happening. So two-factor authentication really secures accounts. That's one. Number two, and very basic and simple one, I think, is to make sure that you're choosing your passwords wisely. And I'd say making sure that your password is not predictable. People have their birthdays as their password, their child's name or birthday, and things like that, which are very simple and easy to guess, means that then you're likely to get hacked even just as easily. So making sure that you combine different characters, both letters and numbers and hashtags and @ and things like that, helps you to keep a strong password that then secures your account. Combine that with two-factor authentication, you're safe. In addition to that, just educate yourself about other security features you could have. Things like privacy checks around who can tag you on content. Who do you allow to be able to add you as a friend? And all of these features we've put there to allow you to have the most control you can regarding your account. So for instance, you shouldn't allow that anyone could be able to tag you unless you're at a page where you are happy to have anyone and everyone be able to share your content and show that, I was at a rally you were at, or I was also in the room when Levi was presenting, and so on and so forth. It's fine. But then to the extent that you have a personal profile, for example, determine who are the people who can tag you, who can see your content, who can see your comments, who can even comment. Some of the frustration I hear from people will be around, comments that are offensive coming onto their page or onto their profile. Yeah. Filtering comments is a very basic feature we have on there. Again, you'd find that within your settings, we have that enabled for you to filter out certain words that you find that generally you'd get. When, for example, I'm thinking of a politician, for instance, who often is getting targeted based on words. So you find there's certain words that are derogative or are insulting them and constantly are being used to describe them. Have those words set up in your keywords settings so that anyone trying to put up a comment with those keywords in there, automatically the comment will not get published on your page. It doesn't even feature.
You can do that.
Yes, you can. And all of these things are possible within both Facebook and Instagram. You can be able to do that. On WhatsApp, which is, I think, another area where I hear people complain a lot around how to control their content. When you see content while you're in groups, because WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, so even we cannot see the content on there, but you're in that group, being able to report that content is really helpful for our teams, because then we can be able now to see it, because then the copy of it could be sent to us. So holding down on a piece of content on WhatsApp whether it's a picture you're looking at or whatever, if you hold down long press on it, it will pop up a menu, and one of the options there is to report the issue to us. And once you report that issue to WhatsApp team, they will take the necessary action.
A lot of people don't know that.
Hence why we're here to share this information, and I hope that you're learning something from this conversation. But educating yourself gives you all of these tips and options. And if you look through your privacy checkup, your security settings, all of that information is there, and we're constantly providing it in simple ways that you can be able to understand.
So like in a group, what would you do if I wrote something really terrible in a WhatsApp group and I was reported?
You report it. Once you report it, then we'll take the necessary action. We'll again check to see whether it is violating in any form or shape. For example, it's problematic in this way. We'll make the determination, and we'll then take the action to strike you from using our platform. We'll take you down, and you may not be able to use the accounts again, unfortunately. We will set up another WhatsApp. So it's good for people to be aware.
To be aware. You know, there's a fallacy, especially among the youth, that you know, when you're in the social media space, nobody's seeing you. So you can say anything, and you can always delete the comments.
Digital footprints are digital footprints, and they stay on there. I mean, I think it's one thing to again, educating yourself means that you should be aware that when you're using digital tools, you may not be seen at the point when you're doing this because you're in the confines of your private space where you are, but you're leaving a footprint online somewhere, and that is the reason why you see people going to look for jobs, and in a quick lookup online, all of this data about them comes up, and you wonder how that they knew about this, but it's information that sits on there. So I think it's good to just be aware and careful about how you behave yourself. In the same way that you behave yourself offline, you should bring the same, let me say, etiquette online.
I want you to finish by telling us just about that a bit in a nutshell. What would be your advice to us in the political field, those of us who are either covering politics, those of us who are consuming it, those of us who are politicians? What word of advice would you leave for how we carry ourselves as we approach the elections?
So I think first and foremost, again, our community standards are really important for everyone to familiarize with. If you're going to use any of our platforms, be it Facebook, Instagram, for example, to communicate to your audiences, make sure that you're familiarizing with our community standards, because the community standards tell you what is allowable or not allowable on Facebook, and therefore you're able to know how to behave or conduct yourself. That's first. And be it yourself as a political candidate or the person covering political events, or a digital social media manager for any of this, ensuring that you have these basics is really critical. That's first. And then secondly, being responsible in the kind of content that you're creating online is really critical, that you're being cognizant of, again, adhering to those community standards, so you're not propagating hate speech where you're targeting a community or other based on their protected characteristics. So you're basically not targeting people based on their ethnicity, targeting people based on their sex, gender, or the country of origin, and so on. Making sure that the content you're putting out there doesn't target people in that way. You're not proposing harmful actions towards them is really critical. You're not churning out propaganda or information that is misleading people, especially around voting processes. Voter interference is not allowed at all on our platforms, and we try to ensure that we take action on any content found to be interfering with voting processes. Try to make sure that you're also not working in a coordinated way with others to try and put out content that is, mass production of content that is trying to target people or, affect how the election process will be itself. Try to deviate or desist totally from sharing fake news or misinformation or disinformation campaigns online. Please, those will affect your accounts and so on. So trying to be responsible basically in how you use our platforms is really important, and thinking about how you're using these platforms instead to reach your audiences in a way that you couldn't be able to do before, where you may not be necessarily able to engage in every rally or conversation where you can speak about your issues, but ensuring that you're using social media in a way that then talks about the issues that are really important regarding what you're trying to sell to people or the pitches that you're trying to make to people, and doing that without affecting the safety of others is really critical. And if you come across content that you see on your own platform or others that you feel is problematic, report it to Facebook or Instagram or even on WhatsApp. Like I said, clicking those 3 dots adjacent to every post or even a profile that is constantly doing this is helpful, because then when you report it to us, the team that looks at those reports will be able to review as to whether it violates our community standards and take a decision to act accordingly in the ways that I've explained. I think that should keep all of us safe online, at least on our platforms, and should ensure that we are all able to uphold an election that is of integrity. Thank you so much.
It's a very insightful conversation.
Thank you.
Thank
Glad
you.
it was.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. Yes.
Public Policy Director for East and Horn of Africa. You
Correct.
mpaka huko Ethiopia.
Okay. Yeah. Eritrea.
That's quite something.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming.
I appreciate it as well.
That's 59 minutes for this morning. Have a wonderful, wonderful morning. Stay tuned for Leah coming up with soon.